Okay, we're back. This is part two. This is Lance White with Andrew Bartzis.
How you doing?
And we just left off talking about the Lemurian air cities, leapfrogging into the future to make corrections.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can pick up where we left off.
Okay. Lemurian air cities are a local reality that literally is in the air. But in between the cells of every atom is an infinite amount of space. So an air city can be out of reality in between the cells of the Earth and still be an air city out of phase of reality. So when they began to create dimensional drives that created time travel effects, the air city would go into Earth and then time travel that piece of rock and then come back into the air so that they can influence the timeline on a soul family level and on a DNA level. The people in the air city were looking for versions of themselves to correct. Some of them may have gotten darkness instilled into them. They would do healings on different people. They would, at times, literally create an invasion force because at the time the dark would have had the planet. Leapfrogging through time, making corrections in a system where you have 5,000 other species creating time travel effects, it isn't easy. So you need a lot of cities to continually counter this. Where we are right now, 2011 to 2014, every single bit of the time warp is about right now. It's about propaganda coming out. Propaganda that's thousands of years old, hundreds of years old, millions of years old. This propaganda influences the awakening, which is the end of the process where we must have graduation timeline. Absolutely, it's the Prime Creator's will. So, what is a Lemurian air city? A group of people come together, unmanifest physical bodies, and with that energy create a very dreamlike reality. And that dreamlike reality takes form in the upper atmosphere where the Aurora Borealis is. The Aurora Borealis is the Earth's dreamtime sentience, and it's where the sun brings energy to it so that that system of energy has reality behind it. The city itself has its own version of a unity conscious drive where it can go to any part of the galaxy or any part of the universe as long as they can remote view or remote experience those other places. After Lemuria went through its first fall and went to its raise again, we go from, we'll call it 30 million years.
Okay.
Simply because they had to leapfrog backwards and they had to leapfrog forward. Then they had to figure out each time Earth was teleported, the old timeline wars ended because the XY axis of where the planet was could no longer be used as a function for creating a timeline.
Right.
But the sentience that was part of the old timeline was still on the Earth, and Earth adopted those as new first species. Those new first species became part of the Lemurian society and left. When they left, they migrated away and became part of the polluted reality that was out there with drama and got forced back here. This is this endless come and go from Earth. Lemuria's second raise, where it fell and it raised, as the air cities figured out this timeline between here, this time stream between here and here, in this light part of vibratory space, they could try to push out as many of the negative incarnating souls that were being forced at us from as many as 6,000 or 7,000 other planets that were under domination and control.
Wow. That's a big job. And how successful have they been at it?
Well, we're here now.
Right.
We're here now.
Well, yes. Well, so the really exciting part to me is that all of this has to be wrapped up between 2011 and 2014.
Correct.
So we are in the final.
You have to have graduating students. You have to have graduators.
And what happens to the people who are not, quote, ready? Is that even an option?
Earth can bilocate and create multiple versions of itself and allow the separation of densities of people that are ready or not.
So that's where you have this concept of different timelines for people who are totally asleep, people who do not want to awaken, who would rather just continue on like this and have
Correct.
an experience of light and dark. So that is a possibility of
It's through
fracturing.
dream time, though.
Oh,
Say we are a unity dreamtime society. That our world is set up. We have a global dreamtime.
okay.
All of our people have a global dream center. We live in sacred geometry cities that prevent us from going into the global dreamtime.
Okay.
The event is all about us for a brief second experiencing unified global dreamtime.
Okay.
And the more and more we get exposed to it, the more and more the awake people begin to experience synchronicity, deja vu, shared dreams. And then the next layer up of awake people begin to interact with the two and teach, like, you have a kid that has a shared dream with a mother or a father or something to that effect, it spreads. And there's no way the system can stop people sharing that way.
One-on-one.
One-on-one.
Right, right. Even though there is highly developed technology to observe, monitor, there's mind control, and
All
so
that.
on and so forth. Now, you mentioned the event. There was a television show that came on and was aired briefly called The Event, about everybody collapsing and unconscious, and they accessed their future lives, and I don't remember the whole story, but it seems like it was a foreshadowing. And doesn't the dark use the Hollywood film industry to see
Soft disclosure.
Yeah, soft disclosure, yeah. So they can say, well, we told them what was coming.
Well, soft disclosure exists for many reasons. At times, it's just a really creative person coming up with an incredible storyline.
Right.
And at other times, they're influenced by energy beings that say, do this because it needs it.
Right.
Or
right.
you have other people creating things to create disunity and propaganda. We've talked about Nibiru and Planet X. It was a real situation with a real planet. It's been moved dozens and dozens of times. We, as a species, every time they re-air the series, bring it back. They've had to install technology on it that literally keeps it out of phase, so our fear consciousness doesn't remanifest it.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow,
And
interesting.
why Nibiru? Because in the past, the main domination and control beings had parts of themselves all throughout the timeline that could communicate to the central hive location because it's all the same being.
Okay.
So 2011 to 2014, there's over 17 million different things that are of these 15 beings. There's 17 million of them now.
Wow. Now, how does that all get resolved? And let's hear more about the event and how that,
Okay.
have you seen that?
I just described, I'll use this one I used before. You have children sitting at a breakfast table before they have their first period in
Right.
class. Every school's got that.
Yeah.
I had a dream that said this, 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 and the kid next, oh my God, I had the same dream.
Mm.
The same kid and the kid over there.
Yeah.
That begins the spread worldwide where kids have technology to share. The adults will experience it differently. They'll experience, the sleep adults will experience deja vu. Let's say you have two people walking the street and one goes, oh my God, deja vu, and at the exact same time the other guy goes, oh my God, deja vu. You have two people going deja vu at the same time pointing at each other. Something you simply cannot deny, period.
Mhm.
It's just your reality is challenged at that moment. And that's the first part of the event. That gives us the warning that more dream time is coming.
Okay, so that is all so for those who are more awake, we will be warned.
Seeing
We
that.
will see.
We will
seeing
see
it
that
and-
among our people that are asleep.
Right, and then we will be able to interpret that correctly as part of the event that's occurring, because
Correct.
we're clued in on what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
And
We're all multidimensional beings experiencing multiple realities. We may not know all about it, but we know
Right.
enough to go, this is disunity reality, not unity reality.
Exactly, and it's been disunity reality for thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years.
Correct.
Due to the dark and the time wars and the rest of it, and the archons, which we talked about a little bit. We also, I wanted to get the mythology of the Anunnaki straightened out.
Okay.
Because according to Sitchin and his work, the Anunnaki came here some several 100,000 to 400,000 years ago. And that was when we were altered genetically and used as a slave race. Now, how much of that is accurate?
Stitchin's first 3 books are very accurate, though his timelines are off.
Okay.
Stitchin's work were co-opted, and the reason why, when Stitchin wrote his books, he had a multidimensional being helping him translate the texts.
Ah.
He was a highly spiritual person that had a purpose to come in here. His first 3 books, up to The Wars of Gods and Men, are extremely accurate.
Huh.
Time's a little off because Earth has changed time streams so many times, you can't be accurate anymore in those times.
Right.
The Anunnaki were lured here. Their planet, Nibiru, whatever you want to call it, is what's called a free-roaming galactic entity planet.
Okay.
They have a drive inside them that doesn't need a solar system to support it.
Okay.
So they have a different version of a planetary drive. We have a unity consciousness drive.
Okay.
They have a dimensional drive. So the consciousness just needs a leadership society to function psychically with the crystalline technology of the dimensional drive so they can go anywhere they want.
Mm.
And when they go anywhere they want, they can do whatever it is that's within their free will to do.
Mm.
There was a multidimensional being, currently the one that's in charge of all of the Arab countries.
Okay.
Its pieces, parts are all the heads of the Arab families, the so on and so forth, the decision-making people, and the one layer below the decision-making people, and then their banking families. So that's one being. He's
Okay.
the one that lured them from where they were by creating carrot and stick. So they came to a world and saw leftover technology in a destroyed world. They followed to the next world, to the next world, to the next world, until finally they came to our solar system where there was nobody defending it. Completely empty.
Huh.
All of the light and dark forces had petered themselves out and literally couldn't fight anymore. They were done.
Wow.
Earth was
Wow.
abandoned.
Yeah.
Literally abandoned, except for what was left of us before the rise of Atlantis.
Okay.
Lemuria had fallen, multiple timeline wars, species die out, species leave, come back, and all of a sudden it's barren. The Anunnaki come in and go, where's all this technology? And a bunch of, primitive-looking people with high spiritual technology. And they go, scratch their head. And that's when they realized, that's us. They're DNA related to us.
Huh.
Okay, the being that lured them here, lured them to trap them into this society. To get into Earth's solar system, you need to use the stargates of the sun
Mm-hmm.
to get in here. You have to have spiritual relations or DNA relations to get into a solar system. That's essentially how all of them work. The Anunnaki, as a free-roaming galactic planet, came into our solar system, and they never knew they had DNA relations to us, but the being that was luring them did.
Huh.
Trapped them in the incarnation cycle and stripped them of their most powerful psychics and forced them into a reincarnation cycle. And then the second layer, the second most powerful layer, became the new DNA inputs for the skin suit technology that we have here, because they needed the Anunnaki technology, the Anunnaki DNA, and the soul codes, because the Anunnaki had traveled all over the universe with their planet that can go anywhere.
Oh, wow.
Well, the main control beings have been trying to collect soul codes.
Mhm.
Soul codes determine your DNA and soul relations to a solar system. It determines where you can go. If you're a person that has only lived on 10 planets, you can only go to those 10 planets on a soul level. If you want to go to more, you have to incarnate into all of them. So
Mhm.
what these beings were doing were drawing people here that had soul codes from all over.
Mm.
So they needed the Anunnaki because they had a piece to the puzzle that would open up this section of the universe, this section of the universe,
Wow.
this section of the universe, so on and so forth. They got pulled in here. Now Stitchin was pretty much right about mining Earth, but it wasn't about the materials. It was literally that the energy that was in the materials needed to go somewhere else, so that the souls that were Earth-based souls who had migrated away would sense the energy of the gold somewhere else and then be lured back into the machine.
Hmm.
That's these control. That's how they're playing the system here.
Hmm.
The Anunnaki still have free will,
Mhm.
but truly didn't understand the scale of the game they got brought into.
Hmm. Wow. So in a sense, they were there. Even though there are no victims, they were in a sense
Victims.
tripped victims,
Tricked.
just like the rest of us. So Now the Anunnaki would they be reptilian in nature, draconian, or?
That's the thing. They already had enough skin suit technology that they're a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Not everything,
Okay.
but they had enough.
Okay.
I mean, they looked similar to humans,
Okay.
but there were several breeds of them that chose different DNA patterns, even though they were the same species. They could do anything they wanted to their DNA.
And was it the Anunnaki or these original 15 beings that developed the genetics that could present as a light being? In other words, they've taken the best of the genetics of all the races and created a false light matrix.
Correct. False light matrix essentially began by bringing the Anunnaki here.
Okay.
Okay. False light beings, false light technology was literally created by the Anunnaki and then spread to the rest of the planets of domination and control.
Wow.
Remember I said there's womb chakras?
Mm-hmm.
That if you live on that surface, the planet interacts with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you bring a Anunnaki DNA master and a Anunnaki weapons master and you put them there next to a pyramid that raises their consciousness, what are they going to create? Mass weapons of war,
Right.
mass consciousness technological DNA devices that can be spread to an industrial system of domination and control planets.
Wow. So, in a sense, Earth has become like a breeding ground for domination and control of the rest of the galaxy.
Because of the chakras, the womb chakras here. We have 200.
Okay.
And that is unique and beyond unique. There are other planets out there that have womb chakras, but they all have 3 or 4.
Wow.
Okay, we have 200.
Wow. Wow. And now what about our own chakras? There's a whole controversy about us having 7 chakras, 12 chakras, and then George Kavaslis brought up the idea that the chakras were installed as ways of gaining access to us from the dark side.
It is right, and it is also wrong.
Okay.
We have so many first species of Earth. Where do you start?
Right,
Okay.
right.
It is right for 1, 2, 3, but 17 to 34 have 185 chakras.
Wow.
19, no, so on and so
Right,
forth. We have
okay.
so many first species.
Okay.
The story is that big.
Wow.
So you give all the credit to George for pointing it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Now the next phase, all right, you. Okay?
Yeah.
And if there's one first species they wanted to dominate the most, it's because they wanted to breed that species to mass population. And if they did, they needed to control those chakra systems and install domination and control at the chakra level.
Right, and that's done through the incarnation process,
Correct.
right? So what else has been distorted about the incarnation process? And
A
what
lot.
a lot. I mean, basically, nobody's graduated for over 400 some thousand
Yep.
years. Okay, so are there individuals? Because it seems to me that there are individuals or beings that look like humans that are not even close to being human, may not even be ensouled. That is, they don't have a soul or a is it possible for that?
Biomechanical suits is what you're talking about?
I suppose. I
Well,
clones.
they're
and
clones,
robotics.
but here's the thing. When you create a clone of a person, you actually have a spark of that person in there. We're multidimensional beings.
Right.
When you create a clone, there's a spark of them in there.
Right.
When I function, I have parts in all different parts of dimensions interfunctioning so that I can be in this zone and doing this. When you create a clone of a person, you have essentially created a spark that has a very similar spiritual contractual pattern to it.
Yeah, right.
But it's
right.
against the entity's sovereign free will when you just collect its DNA and make a clone of it.
Okay.
So as soon as you create a clone against something sovereign free will, that entity is in domination and control and has very little of its own sovereignty. So a sentience can come in and out of it at any point. The vast majority of worlds out there, they have commerce where beings genetically build a suit for a consciousness to broadcast from one planet to another, and then they go into that suit, live there for a while, and then leave that suit, and that suit goes into cold storage for them.
Wow.
Or they unmanifest a body, travel energetically to the planet, and manifest a body somewhere else.
Huh. Well, now we were originally, as we were designed to
Do exactly that.
to do that, and to time travel and bilocate and move it between dimensions and
Right.
so on and so forth. So that probably hasn't, those skills have not existed for hundreds of thousands of years due to the fragmentation and the control system that's set up.
Mhm.
So now, how is this all going to get resolved? How are some of the ways that this can be resolved with all these different versions? At some point, doesn't all that have to be unified
Through Dreamtime.
through Dreamtime? Okay.
It always comes back to Dreamtime. The technology of the skin suit was created in Dreamtime by Unity Consciousness.
Huh. Interesting.
And then you have beings that are hijacking the astral world and creating fake Dreamtimes in sacred geometry cities.
Right. And then these are most major cities are sacred geometry cities, aren't
Absolutely every one of them.
they? Every one of them, yeah. So
The road systems are part of the sacred geometry.
the names.
The names, the light posts, the electrical wires, the cable wires. Guess
Right.
what? It's all integrated into that sacred geometry.
Right. So basically, humans don't have much of a chance to awaken at all, unless.
Well, they do. It's about claiming your sovereign free will. You know, before when we were outside, we were talking about, the light worker industry.
oh,
you know
right,
what?
right.
There's some really powerful light workers out there, and I have a little something to say to them. We can't be cheerleaders anymore. We have to be proactive. We have to get out there and march. We have to begin to use our natural presence to create sparks of a march, in a
Mhm.
unity march. One guy may not like his guy, one guy may not like this other woman's work, but we still, in unity, have to have enough forgiveness to come together, and it's part of the resistance of free earth.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so up for that. And that means putting aside any perceived differences, and that brings up the ego.
Absolutely.
That, so many New Age people are, in love with their own creations.
We're lost in light, love, and bliss.
Right.
And are ignorant, blissfully ignorant
Yeah.
of reality.
Right. And so we've lost our edge and our anger.
Yep.
And we need that fuel. We need to become angry. We
Yes.
need to see the truth. And so it's important when people are pointing out that what's really happening, that light workers not say, well, you're just going down a conspiracy path. That we have to be able to see what we're talking about here and understand it in deeper levels, and so that we understand how we can come together in unity consciousness.
Correct.
Because that is the key, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because
Unity consciousness doesn't have disagreeers in it.
Right, right.
Okay? Unity
Right.
consciousness doesn't have a group of cheerleaders.
Right.
It has everybody, in the metaphorical term, with a sign that has a pitchfork on one, another sign that has a torch on the other.
Right.
I'm not saying create violence. I'm saying
Right.
the signs speak all the metaphorical language you need. One sign's a pitchfork, one sign's a torch. You have 10,000 people in the streets of America doing that. They know the mob is back. The mob has always been they've been defeated by.
Now, how do we know what to do with our information when we know that the control system is set up to recognize when somebody gets too much light or they're getting too close? It's like grass growing. They can see that there's
Something growing quick.
yeah, and they just cut it down.
Yep.
Isn't that how it
It
works?
comes to claiming their sovereign free will and using it and respecting it at every level. I came up with some spiritual removal contract documents for banking, for government, and for media.
Oh, good.
And I'll be putting another one out, how to reaffirm your spiritual contracts to Earth sentience, separate of a system of domination and control. And I encourage people that have read those, add your own to it.
Mhm.
It is a framework.
Yeah.
And that framework is to use the words to empower yourself so that you understand using your sovereign free will is how you separate yourself from the rotten soul family that has been force incarnated with us.
Right. And do you have a website for that?
Yep, andrewbartzis.com.
Perfect. So 2011 to 2014 is that we're in this time frame now.
Correct.
what happens, so there will be people that may not even be aware of what's going on. The 2015 will come, 16, 17, and 18.
They will be in dream time, though.
In dream time, all
And
right.
when they're ready to come out, it'll only be like a few minutes or seconds past.
Right, because it will actually be that.
They're suspended and held into dream time until ready.
Right.
But Earth will be breaking into local realities again.
Oh, good.
When the armies began to march for Rome, for China, for Mongolia, they were conquering each local reality.
Mhm.
And as they conquered all of them, they made roads to all of them and linked them to sacred geometry cities.
Mhm.
They took away the unity consciousness and made disunity consciousness world.
Mhm.
Because they were all centralized locations to the networks of roads in dominating cities.
And that's also connected to the ley lines, right?
Correct.
So
It was
did-
to overwrite the ley lines.
Overwrite
That's
them,
to
yes, they
overwrite
have been
them.
overwritten. So, of all these people that are doing ley line work, are they doing anything positive? I mean, are they actually?
Oh, they are doing very
Okay,
positive
okay.
work. The energy of Earth has gone from seventh dimensional to sixth dimensional, fifth to fourth to where we are now, low third.
Yes.
Because if we have any power, our weed grows really fast and they got to chop it down quick.
Right.
So, grid work, absolutely important.
Okay.
If we had people out there that were in some type of unity to do grid work with 5,000 people at a time, and 1,000 target one ley line, another 1,000 target another, in based off of a calendar system, you can change the way the ley lines create energy for all of our brothers and sisters of this world. The ley lines create the energy pattern for consciousness to expand.
Okay.
It's also the XY axis for astral projection. We've had thousands of societies and civilizations that all they did was watch those stars. And the stars that they watched aren't the same stars we watch today,
Right.
because reality is perceived through your culture. We're a media-driven culture now. They own our oral traditions.
Right.
Our oral historians were taken away. We still have some now that are out there trying to promote it, but the people that are born into the TV generation, the media generation, that's their oral history.
Right.
And it's not your mother and father as much anymore.
Right.
That's where it has to change. People like me coming out and doing the oral recording of the Akashic record.
Right.
Not in a trance, you can communicate and talk to me. I'm a real person.
Right. And you can get the facts.
I'm not channeling, I'm not anything like that. I'm simply in the Akashic record in a sacred neutral perspective. If I see something that's evil and dark in the Akashic record, it doesn't hurt me because it's just information.
Right.
If I
right.
allow myself to go in polarity and to be affected by it, I can't read the Akashic record anymore.
Right.
It
That
must
makes
be
sense.
a neutral recollection, recalling of it.
Yeah. And then that brings up the idea of us working very diligently on our judgments.
Yes.
Because once we move into judgment, we've moved into polarity
Correct.
consciousness, and we're then in duality. So it's not that ego is bad. It's just that
It's a survival tool.
right, and we are coming from survival because it's being thrown at us left, right, and center, and every which way,
Mhm.
including in our dream time.
Yep.
So, well, it looks like we're about ready to take another break, and we will return with Andrew Bartzitz, and we will be talking more about this
Absolutely.
stuff. Okay.